Charles. Green regs and scam.
Or as Gomer Pyle would say, Shazam.
Shazam, exactly. A little hot on the audio there, but we're here live on Sunday with Charles. And Charles, I've been striving each week to have the graphic really be kind of a political cartoon, even if it's photographic, to go along with what we're going to discuss. And in this one, of course, we've got Mr. Trump there evaluating the green regs and scam being served up by Barack Obama.
And he doesn't like the way it smells. It does not pass the smell test. I mean, this is, once again, this stellar art department of yours is on overdrive, going from strength to strength. But really, it's a fascinating poster, and it really encapsulates what I believe to be the truth, that you could call anything sustainable or green or renewable. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's an economic or even environmentally favorable prospect. You just slap a name on it, and people say, oh, green, I'll give money to that. That sounds good. And in fact, we're going to see as we go through this that this green program has gulled a lot of people into making stupid investments.
Well, it wasn't entirely clear to me until I went to South Dakota and Quinn Michaels and I met with Professor Jimmy, who spoke about the incredibly toxic process of mining these rare earth magnets that are needed to create the windmills. Everybody sees a windmill and figures, oh, renewable energy, that's great. But what Professor Jimmy told us was that they have to pump all this chemical stuff into the ground to get them, and then it's just like totally destroying this area of China where they're coming from. So it got you to stop and think for a second that, who's behind promoting these windmills and who's making money from that and who suffers from that. The other thing that was interesting is Professor Jimmy had this like super low friction material. And I thought, wow, if you could make car engines or something out of that, maybe you could get 100 miles per gallon on gasoline, and that would be green.
Right, so I think a lot of this, let me take a step back and say that I am very much in favor of doing what we can to leave this earth a better place for the time that we're on it. So I'm not somebody who thinks it's a cool thing to cut down the rainforest or destroy natural habitats, et cetera. I think we should be reverential and protective of the natural wilderness that's out there.
But you're not on board with scam I am.
I am certainly not on board with that. And in that time frame, it's important to remember what was going on is that energy prices were doing this. Right before, if you remember, I think the oil price, depending on whether it was Brent or West Texas Intermediate, was like 120, 140 in August 2008. And prices had been on this kind of a curve. So if you're going to sit there with a model and say, we take this piece of equipment over here, and if you just buy this piece of equipment, which friendly banker over here will finance for you, you'll be using fewer barrels of oil, and the price is going up like this, and so the math says it's a great investment. But when the price does this, suddenly, the high price that you paid up front for the piece of equipment, even though you financed it, doesn't dollar out. So, we have to be really, really careful with people who sell investment ideas on the basis that there's an added bonus because the environment's better off, without looking underneath the fine print. And that isn't what happened when Barack Obama, together with Jeff Immelt, sold a pile of crap to us as the stimulus, where we borrowed about almost $1 trillion. And so many of those projects today, are just absolute wastes of money, and the debt remains, and that debt has to be repaid by our children and by ourselves, our children, our grandchildren, and maybe our great-grandchildren.
And of course, Jeff Immelt was still the CEO of GE while he was advising Barack Obama, how is that not a conflict of interest?
I absolutely. And how did he have the spare time to do it? It wasn't as if he was doing a great job with GE. He ran that company into the ground.
Well, and I was the CEO of 21st Century 3D, and that took all day. How does the guy who's in charge of GE have time to crap around with Obama? I don't get it.
Yeah.
Unless he's making more money by doing that than he is from running GE.
Yeah, well, but seriously though, on the poster itself, I congratulate the art department. It's fantastic work.
Thank you.
And it's high time, and we've got to go curate, I think. This is the 71st show that we've done together,
Yeah.
or 70th show, whatever. We'll probably have to curate them.
Well, we're going to start this week a new segment called 90 Seconds with Charles Ortel, because people have told us that they feel like, 2 hours, it's so long. We talked about, 90 minutes, 60 minutes, but we were like, hey, let's cut right to the point, 90 seconds, and get the hell out. But seriously, though, it'll be just a quick recap to remind people who maybe have come to the program recently and haven't seen them, and also just to recap in people's minds what were the most important issues and what was the general topic of each show. So as you've said in the past, we've got a lot of different countries that are now realizing that what happened and getting on board with investigating. So if investigators really want to drill into the most meaningful aspects of this long-running series here now, we're going to use that tool to help people just find the information more quickly and reiterate in their minds what is important. But now, of course, Charles, we have got one of your quickly becoming classic slide presentations.
Great. Well, so what we're going to explain to people today, we haven't really focused yet on the so-called Clinton Climate Initiative, which I'll cut to the chase. I mean, it's a complete con job. The thing never lawfully existed. They managed to seduce a whole bunch of very smart people, including Mayor Mike Bloomberg, our former mayor here in New York,
I like Bloomberg.
I do too. A multi-billionaire. They conned him, and we're going to show you how. And they conned a whole bunch of big city mayors around the world to get involved in a project that, fundamentally is just what I said when I was describing it generally. It was a scheme to get these big city mayors to go to meetings where financiers and vendors would articulate, here's a green project, why don't you buy this gigantic thing over here for $400 million, and banker A will lend you the $400 million to do it, so you're not out of pocket. Win, win, win. The only problem with that is the Clinton Climate Initiative was never organized lawfully anywhere in the world as a charity, and the Clinton Foundation was never changed its charter lawfully to control it. So other than that,
how'd you like the play, Mrs. Clinton? But they always do that, right? They select something where, how could you possibly scrutinize this? We're helping the climate.
Right, exactly.
We're doing more good than bad, so it's got to be okay.
Exactly.
It's like the Robin Hood theory. And we keep forgetting to do the Wrath of Khan.
That's right. We should do that one, actually, yeah. But so that's what we're going to focus upon today. Now, this is part of our new series, It's Not Easy Being Green, that this is the first one we're doing, focusing on the Clinton Climate Initiative, but there are many other really horrible ideas that have been sold to the public as green projects that have not really helped the environment and have also piled on massive debts and enriched political cronies, all in the guise of philanthropy, because people aren't thinking clearly enough about what truly is happening.
Right.
So we're going to take the viewership through some of this detail now in overwhelming detail, so that you can see this isn't a judgment call that I have this bias against the Clintons or whatever. No. We're going to show you the facts, and you can make up your mind.
Well, because it's also not just the Clintons. It's, of course, Scam I Am.
Exactly.
Mr. Obama.
That's very good.
Yeah.
So if we go to the next page, this is our standard disclaimer. And for the new viewers, we're broadcasting here from an undisclosed location in Manhattan.
It's been doxed like crazy.
Whatever. But it's a nice part.
25th and 7th here.
Well, there you go. I wasn't going to do that to you, but anyway.
It's fine. It's been done.
All right. So that's where we are. And in America, maybe not in all the sanctuary cities forever, but in America, you still do have freedom of speech.
Well, unless you say something that YouTube or Dave Swigert doesn't like.
Yeah, I forgot about that. But our approach here is to lay out for the viewership the actual sources that we are considering. And today, actually, I made it simple for people. I laboriously copied out of these source materials key passages that you're going to want to read on your own. All these slides will be available after the show is over for anybody who wants to look at them. They're free. And you will be able to form your own opinions about the facts that we present, the issues that we frame, and the conclusions we reach. So additional sources of detail, of course, you can go to my website. You can go to Jason's Crowdsource the Truth site. You can make a bedspread out of that movie poster there if you have kids.
Well, I don't have that up on Redbubble yet, but we could certainly put it there. People can go to charlesortel.com and see all this information. These slides are, of course, always available on the playlist that we have on Crowdsource the Truth, on the main Crowdsource the Truth YouTube channel. And of course, we're broadcasting today on Crowdsource the Truth too. It's interesting, Charles, I still get emails from people who are telling me, oh, are you okay? We haven't seen you in a long time. And they don't realize that a series of anonymous malicious strikes on the YouTube channel have resulted in the creation of Crowdsource the Truth too. So if people are watching us right now on periscope.tv/CS the Truth, or if they're watching on the Facebook group, which just this week passed 10,000 members.
Wow.
Yeah. So you can watch on Facebook, you can watch on vk.com if you're in Russia, which I hear is lovely this time of year. And of course, our patrons on patreon.com are insulated from the ridiculous strikes of malicious YouTube vandals because Patreon is now receiving live streams from Vimeo, and people who become sponsors at patreon.com/crowdsource the truth can have an interruption-free experience and watch all the episodes of Sunday with Charles, and Charles Ortel is closing in, and also all the shows we're doing on Crowdsource the Truth. So this is a great resource, the playlist, because it does become confusing when things are spread around all these different YouTube channels, and I believe that was the intention of the people striking the channel, but we've luckily got this playlist so people can watch all the episodes that we've done.
And just to give people a sense, up here it says 7,400 views. That's just of the playlist.
Right.
I mean, you add up, we haven't gone back and added up the views of all of these videos, and some have been suppressed. But I think you're looking at, you might be looking in the millions at this point in terms of views.
We should definitely calculate that. I think it could be easily done with the analytics there in YouTube. But yeah, I mean, again, that's part of the reason I feel these strikes have happened. Certain people think I'm complaining. I'm just pointing out the facts. When you bring forward information about the largest and most powerful criminal syndicate in the history of humankind, the capillary fingers of those organizations are enacted to stop me from enabling you and the other incredibly credible and important guests that we have on to try to stop that information from coming out. So we should definitely, that's a number that scares them, the vast number of views that we've gotten on all this material.
And thank you, Jason, for letting me do this, letting us do this, and thanks to the viewership for watching and recommending so many of our shows.
It is my pleasure, Charles, and I want to remind people to be following you on Twitter. You, of course, are at Charles Ortel, and you are daily tweeting some of the most important things happening in the news about dopes like James Comey and you know, the wealthy donors. I'm sure we've got some tweets in here about Andrew Downer.
I like this one, actually. This is just a feature. And Amy Chozick, if you're ever going to watch this, I bought your book. Okay, I'm going to read your book. We'd be delighted to have you on this show to interview you and have you tell the inside story of how you put the book together and, you know, why you've wasted 10 years of your life covering the Clintons. But actually, from what I saw of your book so far, you're an excellent writer, and it's going to be a pleasure to read the whole thing.
And she could perhaps tell us what happened in the course of writing that thing.
So, if we remember the initial reaction of Donald Trump on North Korea, making a big deal of North Korea, it was wall-to-wall coverage in the mains. He's going to blow up the world. It's nuclear. This, he's irresponsible.
Yeah.
You know, John McCain and all these other people. And now look what happened. I mean, this really is, it's up there with, when I was a little kid, one of my earliest memories going to school.
Nixon in China.
I don't think. No, that I was old then. I'm a little kid.
Sorry.
When I went to nursery school, it was back in the day where you actually, at every nursery school, you had to get up and go. There's a drill to go down into the basement for the bomb shelters.
Right.
And that was, we're talking 1960. That time, rough time frame. Yeah. And let's say scroll forward 8 years, 10 years after that. If you had told me that I would ever have an opportunity to go into Eastern Europe, Communist China, whatever, I was like, yeah, get out of here.
It's like
no
going
way.
to Mars.
Right, it's like, yeah, right, that's not happening. and then, of course, the Berlin Wall fell. And, even I, who was very much disposed, liking Ronald Reagan, when he went over there and he said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall, I was like, But he got it done. And this is a tear down this wall moment.
Yeah.
And honestly, Donald Trump and his people deserve enormous credit for this. Remember that he got this movement done after Rex Tillerson was out.
Right.
Right. So I mean, it's to say some of the negatives that were being said about our president were that, he's a businessman, he has no experience internationally. How could he handle these very high degree of difficulty things that, Barack Obama and George W. Bush, they didn't do such a good job of them. Anyway, now it seems like there's a lot that could go wrong between now and some kind of a deal with the Koreas. But I think in the short run, we have to give President Trump and his team an enormous amount of credit. And remember as well that he's not just simply trying to fix things in Korea. I mean, he's gone full on against all the major problems that he inherited in the Middle East. Everywhere around the world, he's trying to see, is there a way to get these problems resolved so we can move forward, so the world can be a safer place. And I give amazing credit to the guy.
I agree. I mean, this is huge, and I don't really understand how, even if you hate Donald Trump, even if you think everything he says is stupid, this is monumental. I mean, the fact that we've got an American diplomat shaking hands with Kim right here, and we're working towards a deal, is such a huge step forward. I was pretty interested in that Sony hack that happened 2-3 years ago. I was in it,
Were you?
Well, because I worked on Amazing Spider-Man, and I had a contract with Sony to design the EX3D, which was a 3D video camera that I actually was designing for Sony, and they defaulted on the contract and never paid me. And there's emails in there from someone else named Jason Goodman that have been attributed to me that I have nothing to do with, but my social security number was released through that hack, and all kinds of stuff happened because I was a paid employee of Sony on Amazing Spider-Man. But I knew that North Korea didn't do it, and Obama was on TV talking about how we're going to retaliate against North Korea at a time of our choosing. Why would North Korea hack Sony over that dumb movie? I don't believe that.
Was it the America What Yeah movie, or what was it?
No, it was the movie called The Interview about Seth Rogen interviewing Kim, and they said that caused, I mean, that's idiotic. If they had the ability to hack, wouldn't they hack like NORAD or Citibank or?
Well, the subject of the Obama administration making false claims about movies and videos, we could do
Right.
hours on that one. Remember the
Exactly.
cartoon video? But if we go back into the slide, so what we've done, I had my usual Saturday night, which is to do nothing, and I was watching television, and I happened to come home just as this Donald Trump rally was up on Fox at least. And we have it here linked for people if they want it. It's to the right, left. Yeah. And I have to say, I mean, this is just an amazing performance, if nothing else. Would I speak to a crowd like that? I probably wouldn't. But, I mean, this person, our president, has an uncanny ability to fire up a crowd in what seems like completely extemporaneous remarks. I mean, it was just...
It does.
It really is something...
But the makeup is terrible. Doesn't he realize that he looks like some kind of orange raccoon where his eyes are...
I don't think it's that bad, Jason. I mean,
I don't know. When you look at it on this small screen, it looks a little, I don't know, I'm not into makeup and stuff, but I don't need to,
yeah, no,
sorry to criticize him, but.
No, that's all right. I mean, anyway, I think if you listen to him, and this little kid over here is yawning, it's kind of amusing, but it really is worth the whole 1 hour. And remember that this is a gentleman who's, I think, now 71, 72 years old.
The energy level is unbelievable, no doubt about that.
To do what he's doing, going from rally to meeting to this, traveling around the world. And he's not just sitting there saying, today I think I'll take a day off and I'll have some me time.
Right.
I mean, he's just full bore, head on, doing a lot of good stuff and making progress against what seemed to many to be intractable problems.
I mean, frankly, if all he does is denuclearize North Korea, that's a pretty good presidency.
Yeah. I think he will do a lot more. And let's wish him all luck. Let's wish everybody luck on that. That's a project that would help the Koreas, both Koreas. I think, and now also Kim Jong-un has talked recently. He wants to normalize relations with Japan now.
That is huge.
Yeah, that's massive. So this second main slide. We always like to talk about the most important things that happened. Melania Trump, if you remember, as the resistance mounted before Donald Trump was inaugurated, all the fashionistas were saying, I'm not going to dress Melania. Right. We're not going to help her. She'll never be able to handle the White House without us.
That's terrible.
And instead, she apparently cut the staff down of the First Lady down from, I think it was 30 down to 10 or 12 or something like that.
She's incredibly impressive, I have to say.
Yeah, and I'm not, at all a judge of fashion, this and whether a dinner is well catered or not. But I think most people who've been looking at this, and many of these reports come in the mainstream press, which has been so sharply critical of the Trumps, have to give Melania Trump a lot of credit. She entertained the Prime Minister of Japan, I think it was, and his wife down at Mar-a-Lago. She then did the big deal. She went to the Bush funeral.
Right.
And then she went and did this stunning state dinner, which came off flawlessly. Now, if we will remember, state dinners are not necessarily that easy to do. And I don't blame this on Barack Obama, but the first one that he had with India was a disaster.
Why is that?
Don't you remember the Salahis?
Those people who snuck in.
Snuck in, had their pictures taken next to Joe Biden.
How did the Secret Service allow that to happen?
I mean, it's chaotic. So anyway, I think it's worth giving Melania Trump some credit here. And I don't wish the job of trying to assist either as a man or a woman, the president of any country. It must be it's a thankless task. You live in a fishbowl, you got no privacy, you're not paid. And to pull this stuff off with all the tension that's in the air.
Who's not paid? You mean the First
First
Lady?
Lady's not paid a dime.
I think she's all right with money, to tell you the truth, if I had to guess.
Yeah.
But back to the slides.
Yeah, back to the slides. So we have a response. This House Intelligence report came out. I didn't read every page, but I read enough of it to say that, to conclude that it is a serious report. And here's this, I'm sorry, the guy's a bonehead, this guy Ted Lieu from California. What is it in the drinking water out there in California, where I was born a long time ago? But, of course, their reaction is like, it's scripted. Report comes out, it's not a serious report. It wasn't the kind of stuff that we would have done. Baloney.
Isn't this a report talking about Awan's infiltration of the IT department, and Ted Lieu was somehow involved with that?
Well, no, it may tangentially touch on this. This is more focused on the Russia, whether there was interference in the 2015-16 election.
This guy's got Awan stink all over him.
Well, as do so many people who employed the Awan brothers, continue to have some lingering connections to this team of highly suspicious supposed IT experts employed at taxpayer expense and getting access to highly sensitive materials, not for a week or a month, but for many, many years.
Former McDonald's worker.
Exactly. So this person can't be taken seriously.
Well, but it's interesting to observe because, it again fits a pattern of he's involved in that Iran scandal, so now, okay, get him on CNN talking about the Russia investigation being real or whatever their particular agenda. I mean, he's part of the crew, basically.
Exactly. Well, I mean, and CNN, you can just stop right there, the Clinton News Network. I mean, it's just, it really, I remember when CNN first started, now 30 years ago, I guess,
Yep.
Or so ago, it was quite something. It was more balanced, but now, particularly in the Trump period, before the election, I think didn't they spend almost a year looking for that MH370 plane, nonstop?
Well, I don't know if CNN did, but definitely people have. That's an interesting story to discuss with Field McConnell and David Hawkins. But, CNN is not my kind of thing.
Me either. So then we have this spectacle of the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and I obviously did not watch it, but I did see that this story here about some idiotic supposed comedian, Michelle Wolf, trash
I've never
talking.
heard of her.
I haven't either. Laura Loomer says she bears an uncanny resemblance to Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the comedian. Maybe we'll see that. But here's, this is a decent human being, Sarah Huckabee Sanders. She's got 3 young children who are better behaved by far than the White House Correspondents' Corps. And for this comedian to savagely attack Sarah Huckabee Sanders over her physical appearance and stuff like that is just wrong.
Isn't it also ironic that everybody makes fun of Donald Trump being a misogynist, but when he does put a woman out front in a responsible position, the first thing they do is attack her?
Yeah. And it's not like we're talking about, no disrespect meant to you because you're not like this, but the Hollywood crowd, the entertainment crowd, are they coming off a good 12, 18-month period, or have they been exposed, now Bill Cosby and all these other icons of the entertainment world, the way they Tom Brokaw, which may or may not be true, the allegations about him. I just think that this has become a very bad and dangerous joke, worse than that, and that Democrats are really going to start, I think, if they care, maybe they don't care about increasing their base, but by this kind of behavior, encouraging this type of activity, I just think that's completely wrong.
Well, and also, I mean, you talk about body image and fat shaming and all that. I mean, isn't Hollywood sort of like the progenitor of all that, where every single woman is incredibly fit and beautiful, and all the women around the world basically are given this unrealistic image of what they're to aspire to. And then when a woman focuses on her career, her family, and maybe she doesn't have time to get a private chef and go to the gym all day, so she sort of looks like a regular person, and then they make fun of her. It's not cool. Really cool.
And then we have as well this Kanye West. We won't dwell on his comments, but
where are you at with Kanye West, Charles?
I think his comments are wonderful, frankly. I mean, when we go back into the Democratic Party, if you want to talk history in the Democratic Party at key moments in the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, et cetera, they were against improving the lot of African Americans in this country. Many prominent Democrats.
What did I miss there with the Kanye West?
It's this one. Yeah.
That keeps bringing up Michelle Wolf.
No, it's that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yes.
Okay.
So what Kanye basically, he's supporting a younger African American woman named Candace Owens, I think, who was basically saying, look, the Democratic Party is taking African Americans for granted, and it's not like you have to be a Democrat if you're of a certain origin, whether it's white, black, Hispanic, Asian, or whatever. And for too long, people like this lady Kathy Barnett and others are saying, the Democratic Party has been in control of the public school system, many inner cities, many places that just are wastelands after decades of corruption and not only lack of progress, moving backwards. Mm-hmm. So when Donald Trump actually started into this race, he did say at one point, what have you got to lose? Try something new. And it's working. I mean, black unemployment, Hispanic unemployment in a short period of time is at the lowest levels in the case of black unemployment, I think, in history.
Wow.
And Donald Trump and his team are only now really getting into high gear. Once things get reconfigured, once these multinational companies are encouraged to come back home, once money starts flowing in from abroad, and as other parts of the world become less stable, which I think is going to happen, there's going to be a lot of new hiring inside this country, and the best way to get out of poverty is to get a job. It's not to get a handout.
Yeah.
A good job.
Yeah. I mean, people who are saying that, oh, when is the swamp going to drain already or whatever, I think he's moving at pretty impressive speed. I imagine it's difficult to change these years-long corrupt institutions and make anything happen.
Right. And then Diamond and Silk, I hope one day we can get them on the show. I mean, they are just fantastic.
That would be good.
They were hauled in front of Congress, and this Sheila Jackson Lee, who is not a very intelligent human being, thought she was going to teach Diamond and Silk a few things, and Diamond and Silk basically sent her to the...
Maybe they should run for Congress.
I think they're doing a great job what they're doing. They have a massive megaphone. They're out there in the public domain. I think when you run for Congress and you get enmeshed in the committee meetings, the constituent meeting, you're not able to get anything done. And as a congressperson, it's not very far after you're sworn in that you have to start thinking about whether you need to raise more money to run after 2 years. So I think the best place for Diamond and Silk is just where they are, out going around the country and around the world, speaking truth, and it's good stuff.
They do represent a new generation of political commentator who is empowered by social media, and of course they're appealing to a demographic that's pretty alienated by mainstream news.
Yeah. So what we're going to do now is we're going to dive in, now that we've covered what I consider to be some of the more interesting things that happened in the last week. I'm going to answer this question: how can anyone criticize green, sustainable projects run by charities? I'm going to answer that question by showing you just exactly how to do it, all right? When you think about a charity, the first question I ask myself nowadays, because I'm so cynical, is, does the charity actually exist? That's a thing that's a thing. You might want to check it. Before you give a charity money, does it actually exist?
Is this real?
Right. So we have up top, I won't read the whole thing, this is a quote from our fearless leader, former leader, Bill Clinton, who is in that C40 brochure that you were about to show, this thing, the fancy photography.
Well, we'll show it after you read the quote, right?
I'm not going to read the quote. It says, Bill Clinton says that he's the founder, it says here that he was the founder of the Clinton Foundation and the founder of C40 Cities.
I never heard of C40 Cities.
Oh, it's really lovely. I mean, look at this artwork. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that you get when you've got Michael Bloomberg's deep pocket. Wait, just go back up to the map there. The idea here is you look at this map, and they've managed to corral the mayors of a whole bunch of these larger cities. Mm-hmm. Now, for those of us who are good with math and can think about these pinpoints on the landmass of the Earth, the first thing you need to understand is that only 30% of the surface of the Earth is land. 70% is water.
Oh, and most people are living in these cities. So well, this is the concentration.
Right. So the theory behind C40 is you get a whole bunch of people together who are living in cities and make concentrated efforts to reduce the carbon emissions in those cities, and that's a good thing. Mm-hmm. Now, that probably is a good thing, but you can't think about this in a vacuum. It's not like there's no business person in the world saying, you know what? The last time New York, fixed its power plants, and I'm just making these numbers up, was 1955, and maybe they're old, and maybe the technology they're using is not kind of up to snuff, and maybe we could bring it up to. There are plenty of business people, construction firms, engineers, vendors who are looking at these concentrations of people and saying, I can make money selling equipment to these cities to improve the air quality, improve the water quality.
Well, those are good things.
These are all good things, but they're not necessarily charitable, right? If you've got business, General Electric and Siemens and construction companies and banks financing these projects anyway, It's not clear that this kind of a convening meeting where you get a whole bunch of supposed do-gooders whose husbands and wives and brothers and sisters or whatever are trying to put deals together where they make a lot of money around these meetings. It's not clear that this is purely charitable activity.
Yeah.
Right? But it's also, but what is clear is that in the United States, if you want to set up a charity that's engaged in international activities, as a US entity, you've got to start it in the US, you've got to create a nonprofit corporation, you've got to then submit a truthful application to the IRS explaining your history, explaining your theoretical activities, your planned activities. You've got to make truthful disclosures. You can't hide material facts from the IRS.
No, they hate all that.
Yeah, and you kind of have to exist.
Yeah.
So if we go back into the slide, it says here, in October 2005, an entity which actually is an English company, and I'm writing this up, it would have been way too long to do it in the slides, but there is an English organization that was created in 2003 that by 2005 had convinced the former mayor of London to form something called the World Cities Leadership Climate Change Summit. After that point, some agreement, which of course the Clinton Foundation has never shared with the public, though it should, was made to have the William J. Clinton Foundation, quote, resource the initiative. In other words, fund whatever the climate group had been doing as far back as 2003. So an English company was created in 2003. It became an English charity in 2004. They began doing all this work. The Clinton Foundation got involved. Then they announced in 2006, big announcement that the Clinton Foundation is going to partner and create this C40 Large Cities Climate Leadership Group, except it didn't exist. There was no legal entity called the C40 Large Cities Climate Leadership Group. It was a whole bunch of mayors, who rushed around the world saying, isn't this great? Rather than just being the mayor of London, I can fly all over the world and go to these meetings and put deals together and,
right.
But
Sounds
there's
exciting. Big international summit.
Right, but the Clinton Foundation has no legal authority to do any of this, and there is no technical organization. Now, under American law, a formless aggregation of people cannot be a charity. A bunch of mayors, put a band together, whatever. You go down the corner and you say, hey, we're a charity. No, you're not. You've got to create a corporation, a trust, or an association, and where's the evidence of that? There is no evidence of that. The Clinton Foundation had no authority to do this. There is no such thing as an initiative. And the Clinton Foundation has never amended its own articles of incorporation to do anything other than change its name, that's really good at changing its name. It's changed its name a whole bunch of times, but it's never expanded its own articles of incorporation authority to be anything other than a library and a research center based in Little Rock, Arkansas, not in New York, not in London, not in Boston, not around the world, not on private jets. No, the Clinton Foundation is supposed to be doing stuff in Little Rock, Arkansas, and that's it.
We're really learning quite a lot about having these changing names and different names complicates and obfuscates the prosecution of any kind of actual justice.
Right, and when you think about somebody like Bill Clinton, who, if nothing else, is glib, and has a law degree, though he had to suspend his surrender his law license for various reasons. This is somebody who should know better. He was the Attorney General of his state. He was the governor of his state. He was the President of the United States. He has a wife who's the smartest lawyer in the world, supposedly, or among them. I mean, the average person, particularly a foreigner, would say, probably, it sounds funny, there's no organization anywhere, but it's Bill Clinton. I mean,
how could it be?
How could it be wrong?
What could possibly go wrong?
Right. So what they do is they start these, fundraising, meetings, communiques, all this kind of stuff, and suddenly, at some point, somebody says, look, Bub, Bubba, I mean, we got to have something that works here. So why don't you go into England, and why don't you set up a subsidiary on the 10th of July 2007, the William J. Clinton Foundation UK, and why don't you slip the authority to fight climate change into that subsidiary, which is what they did, except you can't do that lawfully. That's what they actually did, but that doesn't work under American law. You can't start with an American charity and say, you know what, I got caught, but I've been fighting climate change all over the place, and I need to have protection. So why don't I go to Germany and create a subsidiary and give myself the rights through the German subsidiary to fight climate change? No, you can't do that. It's the opposite of what you have to do. You have to control a charity. An American charity must control its international operations tightly from a U.S. base. This would be no control whatsoever if you could do this.
Charles, is there a single thing that the Clinton foundations have done legally?
Well, no.
Good answer.
So, in a word, no. The 12th of March 2008, they had this thing that they'd set up, the William J. Clinton Foundation UK. They somehow managed to get the UK government to say, you know what? You're a not-for-profit corporation entitled to fight climate change and other things, and we're going to make you a UK charity. So have at it. They conned the UK government. And of course, as a guess, the reason they did this is because here's London, the mayor of London saying, you know, this is pretty cool. I set this thing up, I go around the world, and you know, it's good for England, we're one of the first cities, let's move this thing.
Well, people are starstruck, I think, by the Clintons. Even at the book signings, we've seen like some pretty dopey, just average citizens like, oh my God, I'm gonna meet Hillary Clinton. If you're gonna like have dinner with them and ride around in bulletproof limos, you're feeling like, hey, I'm the mayor.
Yeah.
Something.
Well, and so by the 28th of April 2009, dopey Andrew Kessel signs, we have a big file that we got from Arkansas that I'm not going to share yet, of supposedly from the Arkansas Secretary of State of all the papers that have been filed in Arkansas by the Clinton Foundation through a recent date from inception. And they show this, frankly, idiot filling in a form, which is a crime. In Arkansas, it's only a misdemeanor, but when you engage in a deceptive practice and you say, I want to use this Clinton Climate Initiative as a fictitious name, the way they did it, he should not have signed that document unless the Articles of Incorporation of the Clinton Foundation had been changed to encompass this new idea, which they hadn't been. In addition, the way the articles and the bylaws work of the Clinton Foundation, the main one, the chief financial officer which is what Andy Kessel is not allowed to do this kind of stuff by himself. It has to be pursuant to a board action that individuals can't act on their own. You've got to have the board saying this was a good idea. So this is prima facie evidence. After Barack Obama was inaugurated as president, they were trying to correct this problem in the United States to give the illusion that you could fight climate change by creating a fictitious name. That's a doing business as name, basically.
Well, but you've also just raised another point, because just the other day, Scott Bennett was telling me how after they arrested him for something he didn't do and put him through a trial for a bunch of things he didn't do, they pinched him for making a false statement on some military application, which was an error of some kind. And he said the first time in military history that anybody had ever been prosecuted for that. So how is this any different? And I believe it's the same crime, making a false statement, that they're trying to prosecute General Michael Flynn for.
Well, we don't have really enough hours left in 2018 to go through all of the different times that the Clinton Foundation has filed false and materially misleading statements. We've been on I've tried to save the Crowdsource the Truth team from this detail, but I'm writing it up. We've been looking state by state and country by country and date by date, and there's a long list of times and instances where this Kessel and Bruce Lindsay and other people have made false and materially misleading statements on forms that were then either mailed or faxed across state lines in violation of federal laws, using the post office, using illegally obtained post office boxes. I mean, it's a massive, ongoing, unprosecuted pattern and practice of fraud. So remember I told you that in order to have an American charity, you need to create an entity. So on the 22nd of November 2010, something called C40 Climate Leadership Group, Inc. is organized as a Delaware nonprofit corporation. Note the subtle change, C40 Climate Leadership Group, Inc., not C40 Large Cities Climate Leadership Group. They're very good at making the names sort of sound the same, but the only time there is a legal entity formed for the C40 in America is by the 22nd of November 2010. Yet, prior to then, they've been operating inside this country prior to their submitting an application to the IRS on December 28th, 2012. This 1023, we have it, and it's going to be up on the site. It's a 128-page document riddled with lies.
47th anniversary of the assassination of Kennedy.
And that. But so anyway, they only create a legal entity for this C-40 thing in America late on the 22nd of November 2010. They only file their application for federal tax exemption 28 December 2012. And who was still in charge of the IRS tax exempt organization at that point? Lois G. Lerner. They get their application approved on the 24th of November 2013, which is after Lois Lerner has left. But on the 2nd of November 2013, and please, attorneys general, if you're watching this, Donald Trump's people, Mr. Trump, if you're watching this, understand one very important thing, that on the 2nd of November 2013, the Clinton Foundation illegally concentrated power in the three Clintons, Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton, for their lives by amending the bylaws, appointing them Class A directors, giving the power to dominate the board at board meetings, and to run the Clinton Foundation in between board meetings without subject to review by anyone. That's just, you're not allowed to do that.
That statement just clarified for me the whole problem, that the family dominates the board meetings and the board becomes irrelevant.
Well, you could do that. You can try, maybe you could do that, I should say, in certain scenarios, but if you want to be a publicly supported charity, which means you're representative of the public at large, you can't let one family dominate a publicly support, even if there aren't rules that are changed to explicitly give the family power to dominate. You can't let that happen. The board has to be independent.
Right.
Otherwise, there's no point in giving this tax exemption. But here, these people, it'd be one thing if they said, all right, we're going to write these articles of incorporation over here that say it's this and say it's that. And we all know that doesn't matter. We're just going to dominate the charity. These people were dumb enough that they said, you know what we better do? Why don't we make sure in writing that it says we could dominate this charity, gut the charter, and what we'll do to protect ourselves and the donors is we just won't tell any governments. We'll continue to solicit, hiding this material fact. So the question is, did Mike Bloomberg know that they had changed the bylaws of the Clinton Foundation while this C-40 application was in, which in part said that Mike Bloomberg was going to be the chairman of C-40?
Because he was still the mayor of New York at that time.
Well, yeah, but the point is, this is classic Clinton. They get you involved in something,
right,
and they don't tell you what's really going on,
right,
and then the ball moves, and then you go and complain to them, and they say, well, yeah, you're right, the ball moves, but you're on the team, and if I go down, you go down, so should we play along? Should we just let bygones be bygones, or do you want to implicate yourself?
Right. See, I see that happening elsewhere. It's so interesting how these playbooks are all the same.
So now I'm going to take you through, this should tell you right here that C-40 is a farce, just this alone. But because some people take time to really get into the detail, we're now going to take you another level down.
Okay.
And if we go to the next page, please. All right. So this is that application that went into the IRS. I just spent a lot of time explaining that there was a big history of C-40. And they asked, are you a successor to another organization? Think the Climate Group or the Clinton Climate Initiative. Are you a successor to another group? Answer, yes. And if yes, you have to complete the Schedule G. Now you're going to see the entire application, the 128-page application, is up on the site, or will be up on the site. You can see Schedule...
What site?
Your site.
Okay. On the YouTube channel.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
You'll see the Schedule G, which incidentally, we've talked in the past, this issue of successor corporations, old Chi and new Chi, old AIG, and this Schedule G had to be filled out every single time. Here we are in November of 2012. They're submitting yet another false and materially misleading application to the IRS, claiming that a monstrous activity, they're not taking that over from anybody. So bold-faced lie. You see that there. Then it says here, describe your past, present, and planned activities. Now, I'm not going to read all of these words here, But it says C40 Inc. works closely with the Clinton Climate Initiative Cities Program. There is no such thing lawfully. There is no such thing. There's no evidence anywhere in any state that the Clinton Foundation ever created the Clinton Climate Initiative, let alone the Clinton Climate Initiative Cities Program, as a legal entity. You can't have something that's just, you know, an idea or a concept or a narrative or
But that's
whatever.
all they do. They just come up with these things and start talking about them and having events and inviting people.
Yeah, I mean, it's like having the Macallan Scotch Initiative or the, you know, medium rare porterhouse steak initiative. Doesn't mean that you call it something. You know,
I like that initiative.
I like that initiative. With hash browns, cream spinach. You know, I mean, it's ridiculous. And all these words are lifted from their application, and the way the application to the IRS works is you send it in, as they did in 2012, and if something changes while the IRS is considering it, you better tell the IRS normally that things have changed, you know.
Or else you better control the IRS.
Yeah, you could do that. That you could do too.
And the FBI.
And the FBI, and the Department of Justice.
Right.
So, you know, just here we have two simple sets of examples of bold-faced lies. And, you know, maybe Lois Lerner was busy doing other things, persecuting conservatives at this point. You know, maybe the Tea Party people. But, I mean, this record is out there. And going back to Mike Bloomberg, even though he nearly ran me over once with a golf cart by accident down in the Bahamas, it wasn't his fault.
A foot fault.
It was worse than a foot fault. It's not his fault. You know, he's just looking the other way as he was on a golf cart. And I fortunately knew that he was, it's a dangerous part of a certain place where they're paths. And
do you know the scene in Coming to America where they're in the barber shop and he's talking about how he met Martin Luther King?
Oh, yeah.
Like, you never met Martin Luther King.
No, I have met Michael Bloomberg several times.
Kidding. I know you have.
But and I think the world of what he's accomplished with his main business, I think he's done fantastic work away from the C40 thing in charity land, quietly, not trying to hog and take credit for it. But on this one, you know, Mike Bloomberg is going to have to stand up and correct this mess. And he can do it. I mean, what he's trying to get done in C40 is a sensible thing. He shouldn't have been doing it with the Clinton Foundation. And a lot of people did not do the proper due diligence. A lot of people need to be punished. A lot of people are going to be punished. And Mike Bloomberg has an opportunity here to be a strong actor and stand up for everything he believes to be true in charity land and turn these people in. Because there's a lot of correspondence that Mike Bloomberg's people will have had with the Clinton Foundation, which now can come to light, which I don't have.
I mean, he really seems like an honorable guy, right? Should people tweet this video at Mike
Absolutely.
Bloomberg? And
Absolutely.
maybe he could play a role in...
Well, I already contacted his lawyers. I mean, or...
What'd they say?
Not much.
Huh.
I mean, this is one of these messes that, you know, you really want to go away, but it's not going away. And Mike,
it's a mess that you really do want to go away if you're in it.
If you're in it, I'm saying that what you would hope for. I mean, remember in this time frame, Mike Bloomberg was thinking about maybe he was running for president, and he also, if you remember, he decided that not only was he not going to support Donald Trump, but he was going to go to the Democratic National Convention as a Republican and endorse Hillary and criticize Trump. Not the strongest move.
Why would he do that? I mean,
it's probable that there's bad blood. I mean, you know, between the two guys.
Bloomberg and Trump.
Yeah. I mean, Mike Bloomberg is way richer than Donald Trump. The Bloomberg building right there is not so far away from Trump Tower. Who knows? They might personally not get along.
Billionaire neighbors.
That's right. So if we go to the next one.
Next page.
Yes, please. Okay. Here they ask, describe how your grants, loans, or other distributions to organizations further your exempt purposes. And it says here, C40 Inc. has not made any grants to other organizations other than pursuant to its relationship with the Clinton Foundation. Well, that's interesting. How about showing us the agreement that you had with the Clinton Foundation? Because the Clinton Foundation had no authority to fight climate change at this time frame. And if we go down here, C40 gave $4.2 million to the Clinton Foundation in 2001. Of course, that amount doesn't show up on the Schedule B. They gave $7 million away in total. 60% went to the Clinton Foundation. You would have thought that somebody would say, you know, I might want to check whether the Clinton Foundation is allowed to fight climate change and under what authority.
It just doesn't seem plausible to me that that amount of money could move without lawyers and fancy people looking at it.
Again, if you're Mike Bloomberg and you're thinking about a presidential run and Barack Obama's only going to be there for so long and you're the mayor of New York, that's nice for 3 terms or however many terms it was. But he's thinking maybe about his political future. What a nice stepping stone. You're worth $30 billion. C-40, flying around the world, different big city mayors, national leaders. You get a lot of good PR for this work. You inculcate yourself with the left-leaning people in the Republican Party who like to fight climate change and these schemes here that don't seem to be regulated or work. So you could imagine how people close to Mike Bloomberg would say, it's not such a bad idea, and let's make it work. And how bad could it be? And the answer is it's really bad.
So what kind of legal implications, what does this mean for Michael Bloomberg if something really does happen?
Well, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, and there are all sorts of questions about statutes of limitations, and is this something that would be actionable in 2000? Is this behavior that occurred in 2011, 12, 13 actionable?
But isn't it RICO?
Well, I don't know, but I think as the way I would be worried about it if I were Michael Bloomberg, if I had the mission of trying to protect Michael Bloomberg as an advisor as opposed to, a lawyer or whatever.
Someone pointing out how he's in trouble.
Right. What I would do is I'd say, I'd have people really study the Clinton Foundation's public filings, and I'd get smart on just what the FBI may be doing, and then I'd ask a very simple question. What happens when a private foundation, Bloomberg Philanthropies is a private foundation, makes what's called a taxable expenditure? A taxable expenditure is when a foundation, a private foundation like Bloomberg Philanthropies, donates to something, not having done their due diligence, claim to the IRS that they donated to a public charity when it's not a public charity. What happens? You pay a large excise tax if it's just one thing. But if it's a long-standing pattern and practice, the IRS could, if it wanted to be aggressive, say, Mike, you do a lot of things well. You've got your Bloomberg Inc., you're making all kinds of money, you got a lot of money, you gave a lot of money away. Kind of time for you to pay a lot of taxes here. We're going to say that your Bloomberg Philanthropies is not a charity because of this persistent pattern of practice. What you were doing here is you were using this charitable wing to inculcate yourself into the good graces of the Clintons and their orbit so that you could prepare to do a presidential run. And what you need to do to try to get out of trouble is make full and fair disclosure. You were hoodwinked. You need to come, cap in hand, and say, listen, we had no idea that it was this bad, and we want to correct the record. We have done we want to continue to do good charitable work. Please, fine us, slap us on the wrist, do what you need to do, but let us keep doing in Bloomberg Philanthropies what we have been doing.
I find that unlikely. I don't think he's going to do that.
Well, I hope he will. If we just keep going up here, it says, do you have written contracts with each of these organizations? And the answer is no. How could you have no written contract with the Clinton Foundation?
For millions of dollars, they don't have a contract?
It's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
Right. And especially when I'm going to show you in a second that a senior person from Bloomberg Philanthropies transfers over to work at the Clinton Foundation.
Oh, boy.
And one of the founding directors of C40 Inc. is the CEO, Bruce Lindsay, of the Clinton Foundation. So it's not like you could say, well, I didn't know. I mean, and this is
it's all the same people putting the deal together.
And this is in the time frame of the missing servers, missing emails, right? Missing emails are from January 2009 through February 1st, 2013.
They're so busy doing these crimes, covering these crimes. There's no way these are accidents.
I mean, not to mention all the texting, and I don't want to see any of the texts in this one. So then it says, identify each recipient organization and any relationship between you and the recipient organization. It says, C40 Inc. has worked and will continue working closely with the Clinton Foundation to further the charitable goals of each organization. C40 Inc. has provided grant funds to the Clinton Foundation in furtherance of C40 Inc.'s charitable purpose mission. How can you do that? How can you not have checked the Clinton Foundation to make sure, show me where it says that you can fight climate change as a charitable purpose. And Mike Bloomberg's people know better than this. This isn't, they have good lawyers, They have experienced executives. They're smart people over at Bloomberg. I've spent a lot of time at Bloomberg, on little time in conferences, a lot of time on radio and TV over there. I know a lot of people there, and I'd say as their professional group, when they get stuck into something, there is no finer news organization on the planet than the staff that currently is at the Bloomberg.
Wow.
And so, if they put people who understood charities into studying this, if they could,
Seems like they'd spot any of this in 5 seconds.
we'll see. Well, but wait, there's more.
There's more. Okay.
So if we go to the next page. All right. Here is not, we don't have enough time to go into all the suspicious things.
In our lives.
Right. Our estimated future lives may be getting shorter and shorter the more we do this.
Projected existence of planet Earth.
But Bruce Lindsay, again in this filing document with the IRS, it says, Mr. Lindsay joined the Clinton Foundation in 2001 as general counsel and became CEO in 2003. Well, either this is a lie, because that's not the case on the Form 990s for the Clinton Foundation. There, Lindsay is not shown as being general counsel. His law firm does work.
What's his law firm again?
It's Wright, Lindsay, and Jennings, I think. But he is not shown as being the CEO until, I believe, 2005. So there's a big difference. Maybe it's a typo. Maybe the 3 should be a 5. But it's definitely a 3 in the 1023. And there's no way that Bruce Lindsay, looking through the filings that I've seen, was actually the CEO in the Form 990s that went to the IRS and that went to many, many states and indeed foreign countries. They don't say anything about Bruce Lindsay. And you can't have somebody who's the most important, the chief executive officer, not in the 990. I mean, he's either chief executive officer or he isn't. So this is a big problem. Then we have this Ruby Shang. Now, Michael Smith has done a great amount of work on Ms. Shang. Ms. Shang likes PR, so there are lots of articles that Michael Smith has found about her. She was based in Singapore for a long period of time here. But this is a text, I should have a quote here, but this is text lifted from her Asia Foundation Board of Trustees entry. It says she was a country director, Asia director, and advisor at the Clinton Foundation from 2003 to 2015. Where she established the Clinton Health Access Initiative. Well, that didn't come into being until September 29th, 2009. In 2003, there was nothing, no legal entity. In 2004, on March 24th, 2004, there was something called the Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS Initiative. So here's Ms. Shang taking credit for legally operating something in Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, which is news to me, Papua New Guinea, Thailand, and Vietnam. Okay? She takes credit for doing this work in China. This is a venture that started, I believe, in 2004, when the Clinton Foundation was certainly not authorized to do international HIV/AIDS work anywhere, where they took money from Fred Eichner, who's a very wealthy Democratic donor, of one of the biggest bundlers to the Democratic Party, a smart individual. They took money to fight HIV/AIDS from him starting in 2004 forward for many years, several millions of dollars. By 2008, it says she assumed additional responsibility for the Clinton Climate Initiative in China, Japan, Korea, Australia, and throughout Southeast Asia. How do you take responsibility for something that doesn't exist? And if you were in Japan and Korea and throughout Southeast Asia, how come none of those offices show up in the Clinton Foundation 990s, where you're supposed to list all your foreign offices? And how did you do that work without foreign bank accounts in those countries? Other than that, it's a strong resume. Right? Now, I'm going to go easy on Eugenie Bezulko, however you pronounce her name. She has a lot of stuff that she writes about that she was doing prior to working in the Clinton Climate Initiative from May 2007 to June 2009. But how in the hell were you doing work in Rome, Italy? Italy is not figure on the books of the Clinton Foundation. There's no office in Italy. And it says it negotiated memoranda of understanding between the foundation, governments, and academia. Where are those documents? How come the Clinton Foundation doesn't disclose an office in Italy in 2007, 8, or 9? And did you do this without a bank account? How come there are no foreign bank accounts? And this is just a few examples here, but then you get to Maura Pally. Now this is lifted from the Clinton Foundation website. Okay, so we're up there right now, and it says she served as the acting chief executive officer All right. She joined the Clinton Foundation from Bloomberg Philanthropies,
Ooh.
where as a member of the leadership team, she provided strategic direction for programmatic activities and oversight of operational management. So, you've got a lot of explaining to do, both what did Bloomberg Philanthropies know about C40 and the Clinton Foundation and Clinton Climate Initiative? What did the Clinton trustees know about Maura Pally before they hired her?
Mm-hmm.
Why did they put her in as acting chief executive officer in 2015 after this mess was, getting really stinky, frankly?
Just getting underway, really building critical mass. So, I mean, Charles, is it wrong of me to presume that these people, this seems to indicate that people are being selected to take positions because they actually do know what happened and they need them there to prevent other people from finding out what happened?
Instead of having, the kind of friendly questions that Hillary Clinton got and her team got, immunity agreements, co-conspirators in the room, the FBI needs to get involved in this. I mean, this is really serious stuff, because when we get into the volume of projects that I'm going to show you here around the world that this false front set of charities, non-charities, but masquerading as charities, was doing around the world, it's a colossal embarrassment. And the people who would do all this stuff, thinking that it's okay to do it because it's green projects after all,
Right.
and, we're social justice warriors, and what we're doing is fantastic. Yeah, we'll make mistakes, we'll cut corners. No, they have to be fully exposed here. Now, Bruce Lindsay, in my mind, when I look through the various people who've been involved in this mess from the beginning, other than Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, culprit number one is Bruce Lindsay in my mind. There are a lot of defective filings all over the world with his signature on them. And this man is a lawyer, and we know from Bill Clinton's experience having to surrender his law license that when you do the kinds of things that it appears Bruce Lindsay has been doing now for 20 years, you deserve to lose your law license, you deserve to pay criminal penalties,
Yeah.
you deserve to make restitution, and you deserve to go to jail.
Isn't he the guy who had a stroke and then had that sort of weird, fraudulent-looking signature?
That would be him.
Doesn't stress cause high blood pressure and could lead to stroke?
You're not going to segue into one of these ads we see on Fox News,
No,
are you?
no, but I'm just saying maybe he, the pressure of knowing he's like a gigantic criminal maybe burst the blood vessel.
I don't wish that on him.
No,
but
not wishing it. I'm saying maybe that was the cause of the stroke, the stress.
Could be. Now, also here, just briefly on Maura Pally, she's in the initiative business as well. She created No Ceilings, the full participation project. Now that sounds pretty charitable to me.
How are you going to crack the glass ceiling if there is no ceiling?
And then Too Small to Fail, and Job 1. I mean,
What the hell is that?
It's trite truism 6. I mean, it's like, guys, if you want to set up a charity has to be in corporate form, or it has to be association or a trust. It can't be a slogan alone. It's got to be something that can be managed and checked and audited, where the financial consequences can be properly seen, and it's got to be something that is absolutely registered lawfully in every state across the United States where you're soliciting and around the world, and it wasn't. So these 4 people have a lot to answer for. Ruby Shang no longer with the Clinton Foundation, and Eugenia Bazilko also not, but Maura Pally very much there, and Bruce Lindsay. Lindsay was the CEO, Maura Pally was the acting CEO after Braverman left until the new person came in. So these are not minor people here who have engaged in minor transgressions. So now let's go into the numbers a little bit. Okay. These are taken from financial filings for 7, 8, and 9 that are not on the Clinton Foundation website, so they're omitted. And what we're able to do is, from the 990 in each year, you're required to list out your program service expenses by major initiative, right? The 3 largest initiatives you should, and of course in 6 and 7, I'm going to show you the verbiage where they describe these miracles they're accomplishing around the world. They refuse to make disclosures in the 990. The total programs, $85 million in 2006, $133 million in 7, 207 million in 2008, 222 million in 2009, and only 98 million in 2010.
Wow, what happened?
What happened is that the growth in 7, 8, and 9 was the illegally organized and operated CHI, Clinton, the Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS Initiative. The bulk of the money spent actually in 6, 7, 8, 9, in those numbers was all this illegal CHI stuff. By 10, they take it out of the main foundation and they put it into the illegally organized new CHI. So no part of this restructuring is even remotely done in compliance with law. But you see in 6 and 7, we don't know how big CCI was as a percentage of the total program expenses. But by 2008, it was 5.85%, 2009, it was 5.2%, and 2010, it was 11.77%. Now, materiality in accounting terms, they don't tell you that a certain percentage is material, but if you really stress test with accountants, as I have, they'll say to you, look, if it gets to be more than 3%, it starts to be arguably material. But
Wow.
so certainly the idea that
That's lower than I would have guessed as a layperson.
right, no, it's accounting in theory, maybe not in Arkansas, maybe not with the Clintons, but accounting for people like me is about precision.
Yeah, and
You know,
3% for a lot of things is like,
No, because
that's a lot.
that's
yeah.
a lot, because when you start having swings like that, and this understates, if you take, these are total stated programs. If I stripped out the illegal ones, it would be more like 50%, right? Because HIV/AIDS is very big, and there are other ones that are big that shouldn't be in there. So then this is from, this section here is from the accounts. And for 2006, even though you're required, and even though they state that they're using something called SFAS 117, which is a body of accounting guidance that says that you really do have to give visibility into your key programs in your financial statements, they check a box on their 990 saying, yeah, we're using it, but on the audit, we don't.
Just don't want to tell you about it.
Yeah, why not? But in 7, 8, and 9, they take it a step further. And this is where I began to, as I got into it, really distrust the Clinton financials. The versions of the audits that are up on their website for 2007, 8, and 9 purposefully exclude what are called combining financial statements that give visibility into Clinton Climate Initiative figures. So they take this audit, and somebody said, you know what? They were pretty stupid, actually. There's a table of contents page which listed combining statement of activities, combining statement of financial position, and they left the table of contents page up without editing it. They should have,
Wow.
if they were going to be smart, they should have edited that, but they didn't do that. And I found it in the New York State site. And so here are the numbers. Let's look at what they spent in 2007. They say they spent total outflows of $6.5 million, 2.6 on salaries. What's the next item, Jason?
Are we?
Right here.
That
to-
is
here.
2007 consulting and other fees.
$1.8 million on consulting fees. How do you spend $1.8 million on consulting fees and $1.7 million on travel,
Wow.
$400,000 on other allocated expenses? How much do they spend on direct program expenses, Jason?
It's only $2,025.
Does that seem very...
So you got $1 million in travel.
almost 2.
1.7, almost 2 million, and only 2,000 on what you're actually doing. Where are they traveling to?
Hot air is cheap,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's
That is
ridiculous.
amazing, Charles.
And of course they hid this. Of course they hid this. In 2008, the salaries jumped 5 point. Eugenie Bazilko, it's expensive to live in Italy. I'm
Oh,
just making that up. Ruby Chang's flying around Asia.
So they doubled their staff.
Doubled their consulting fees, increased their travel expenses by 40%.
Wow.
And what did they spend in direct programs?
26 grand.
You couldn't even send your kid to a private school
This is
for
one
that.
night at the strip club with Bubba.
I know. But it's just these numbers. I mean, Mike Bloomberg is nothing, and the people around Mike Bloomberg are very careful with money.
You would
Anybody who understands elementary accounting would look at this and say, all right, first thing it says, where's the breakdown? Where are the combining statements? Oh, well, no good answer. And then you show these numbers, and somebody like me will look at these numbers and say, you're telling me that you spent directly on programs less than $80,000, less than $75,000 in 3 years on programs, but you spent a total of let's see, what is this, $31 million on allocated costs. This is just, excuse my language, bullshit. This isn't charity. This is not careful husbanding of the resources of anything.
Well, and the thing that strikes me is Bloomberg News is obviously a financial news agency. It's not like this like Thrasher magazine screwed up their audit. It's like, how could they do that?
So then if we pull this up a little bit here, November 6, 2010, New York City Mayor Michael R. Bloomberg was elected to chair the C40 Cities Climate Leadership Group, okay? November 6, 2010, chair C40 Cities Climate Leadership Group. Can we go back to that slide that has up there that has all the dates in it? November 6th, he's the chair, 2010, further back, there. November 22nd, it's organized. So how can you be chair of something that doesn't exist? And did nobody go to Mike and say, hey, it's nice that you want to do this, but like maybe you should organize it first?
That's a time phone hack.
That's a time phone hack, exactly. So in this time frame, Michael Bloomberg, it would seem, was more interested in raising his international profile. And to give the guy credit, I mean, everyone makes mistakes. But it would seem here that he rushed into the embrace of the Clintons, rushed into this project without doing the kind of due diligence that needed to get done. And he is a very major deep pocket with a lot to lose here. And so he probably, instead of owning up immediately to the problem and getting it fixed, he said, I'll play along, we'll fix it. One way or another, we'll fix it. Remembering that the locus of activity of the Clinton Foundation C40 Climate, the Clinton Climate Initiative was inside New York City, where there are one known office, one secret office,
What
and if I were
Teneo and all that?
Yeah, and if I were Mike Bloomberg, whoever got me into this mess, I mean, maybe that explains why Maura Paley's at the Clinton Foundation. Maybe Mike said, you know what, you got me into this mess, you're going to go live in the mess.
Oh, and maybe go there and somehow get him out? Is that what you're saying?
No, just you're going to atone for your sins by going directly into the mess, and you better fix it. And if you don't,
10th circle of hell or whatever?
Right. So if we keep on going through this, I'm not going to read all these pages, but this goes on and on and on, talking about what the Clinton Foundation was doing, and this is lifted from their 990s. I mercilessly have to make fun of them here. CCI is providing these cities with direct technical support to reduce their carbon emissions.
What is
They're missing the word.
Oh.
It should be carbon.
Wow.
I don't think it's capon. I think it was carbon, but they missed that. And this is Ira Magaziner. He's a big thinker, sloppy as hell.
Wow.
Then you get into this 2007.
What about all those employees getting paid $2 million? They can't find somebody to be a copy editor?
Proofreader, yeah. But so what this turns out to be here is, by 2007, they've come up with this idea that the Clinton Climate Initiative, the city's climate initiative, is going to be an energy efficiency building retrofit program. In other words, you take an old building that's it's got an old wash.
And they got a problem with their apostrophe in its, huh?
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah. But their bigger problem is they're saying they start the thing in 2006, okay? But in a year or so, in total, more than 500 million square feet of project work is underway around the world. 500 million square feet. To put that in perspective, 40,000 square feet is an acre, okay? An acre of land. 500 million square feet in less than a year, or in approximately a year, being undertaken by an organization that doesn't exist.
It's ambitious, to say the least.
Well, I mean, it's just if you're gonna lie, you might as well. This is not the big.
Doozy.
This isn't the big lie strategy. This is the monster lie strategy, man. There's no way that these people who are spending $75,000 directly on projects are in control tightly of anything from an organization that doesn't lawfully exist anywhere in the world. Yet they're bragging about 500 million of that. They're doing a software program, building one with Microsoft. There's nothing commercial there. And then it says they negotiated discounted pricing arrangements with more than 25 manufacturers of energy efficient products, including building materials and systems, clean technology vehicles, and LED traffic lights. More than 1,000 cities now have access to these affordable products. Now, I mean, I don't believe one sentence of that. these for-profit entities are very interested in marketing to cities. Okay, it's not like nobody at General Electric said, New York City's pretty big. They have a lot of power plants that might need help. Maybe we should sell stuff to them. I mean, it's not like nobody thought of that.
Yeah, when they changed those walk, don't walk signs to LED, first of all, looking at it burned my eyes, but that somehow stopped along the way. Someone made a lot of money selling those.
Right, and so this is, this all sounds interesting, but what's very clear to me is that whoever actually gave money, and we're going to talk about who did give money to this, they did no real diligence.
Obviously, I mean, you looked at it for a few minutes, and it's like the first second you find problems, the second you start reading it.
Yeah. So if we go to the next page, we carry on here, and the same idea, retrofitting. They talk in 2008. Oil prices are very high. Remember, I said that the curve would look like this. And so when you do the analysis of how much oil you save or energy you save by adopting this new equipment, it's the cost of the equipment, the running cost of the equipment, and the savings. The savings are, they can be fanciful. If oil prices go like that, then you're not saving so much money. So, and when you're talking about charity, you wouldn't be denominating a charity's impact by saying, these retrofits will yield 25% energy savings and paybacks within 7 years. Those are economic for-profit ideas. That's not charity.
Right.
This is that you're selling equipment into cities. That's what you're doing. And you're doing it in projects that are financed by financiers, maybe by funds who are doing this. And I fail to see even if the thing were lawful, I fail to see the true charitable impact of this endeavor. Then by 2009, you're doing solar parks in remote parts of India and South Africa.
Oh, I saw a documentary about that, building a solar park in India.
Right. And then by 2010, I mean, we're going to do this. This deserves a whole show. This Rimba Raya project is absurd.
What is that?
That was a project where a bunch of people, there's actually, I'm going to have a hard time going through this without laughing. There's a foundation called the Orangutan International Foundation.
What's wrong with orangutans?
Nothing's wrong with it, but it's controlled by a bunch of Hollywood types in Hollywood. And there's this preserve out in Indonesia where there's a bunch of orangutans running around in a jungle and in a forest. And so the manager of this Rimba Raya project somehow hooks up with a venture capitalist in Hong Kong who somehow hooks up with our Magaziner. And they turn this into a gigantic, I have not the offering document, but the explanation of the investment idea, a gigantic billion-dollar plan to monetize the jungle.
What?
And the way it works with these carbon credits, if you're a bad polluter, what you can do is in the old regime, you would earn the right to pollute by purchasing carbon credits.
Right.
The natural growing of trees traps carbon. So here's a large natural forest, it's going to trap carbon, and so they put together this deal basically to monetize the forest, to sell these carbon credits, to allow a polluter to get off. Now the thing doesn't close in the end.
What does that have to do with orangutans?
Well, the orangutans are living in this jungle, which is trapping the carbon, right? So while all these do-gooders, these passionate Hollywood lefties, do-gooders are sitting around at costume parties and around the swimming pools in Beverly Hills talking about their orangutan project, in reality what's going on is that Ira Magaziner and his people are selling these carbon credits to who? To Russia. To Russia. To Gazprom. And it's all, actually Bloomberg did a story about this. So I mean, this is an example of when you start having consultants and investors and loosely controlled projects, all in the guise of something that sounds like charity, a lot of really bad things can happen. Now, fortunately, the Rimba Raya project never closed.
Never closed?
It never came into fruition, but the idea was...
They hired the orangutans to work at the Clinton Foundation. That's how all the accounting got
that's
done.
an insult to orangutans. We go to the next page. So, all right, here are some of the people who gave money to the Clinton Climate Initiative. Okay, different categories of people. We'll start here with The Way We Were, Barbara Streisand.
Oh, I've been to her house.
Really?
Yep. She was going to direct a movie, and they were pitching her on doing it in 3D. I had an extensive conversation with what's his name? James
Brolin.
Yeah.
Not
he's a nice
Grodin,
guy.
but Brolin.
Brolin, yeah. He was a nice guy.
Yeah,
Very
good.
interested in the 3D camera.
So in 2006, in a year where the Clinton Climate Initiative didn't exist, Barbara Streisand's charity gave $500,000 to the William J. Clinton Foundation, saying that its address was 55 West 125th Street for something called a climate change initiative. The address at 55 West 125th Street was not registered properly. There was
that even
no.
his office?
That's his office. That's the office we pay for. That's his former president's
Presidential
office.
yeah.
There was no such thing lawfully as a climate change initiative. And this grant was 44.73% of all the grants of Barbara Streisand's foundation in 2006.
Wow.
So she can't say, it was nothing. And she
Well-
obviously didn't do any diligence here.
Well, and this is maybe worthless, but when you go into Barbara Streisand's house, it's like a gigantic room with a piano there and pictures of her with like Marvin Hamlish and a lot of pictures of her with the Clintons.
Right.
They're tight.
They're tight.
And that house was amazing. It's like mega mansion on a cliff in Malibu with the ocean right there.
I think she has a bunch of different houses next to each other.
I only saw one. But then that's where the Streisand effect thing comes from. Somebody photographed that house and put it on the internet, and she went crazy trying to suppress it, and everyone was like, let me look up that house.
Well, her accountants did not do any good work at all in 2006 because the Clinton Foundation, that's when they went completely off the rails in 2006. So that's when and we'll talk about this in great depth in other broadcasts, that's when they attempted to cover up $64 million stolen from the Clinton Foundation in 2004.
Whoa.
So this is a minor error, $500,000.
Who stole it?
We don't know who stole it, but it left the building.
Wow. They're like, hey, you can't steal from us. We stole that money.
So the second category here this is from the famous MOU, okay? And here it says we're working with 40 of the world's largest cities. We're working with C40. We're retrofitting hundreds of millions of square feet of public and private buildings. The only government donor to the Clinton Climate Initiative is
Mr. Downer.
Croco Dung Down Under. And so this is significant because at the time of signing the MOU, they had not yet, they just put in their annual report for 2007, which shows no government grants in the history of the Clinton Foundation for 2007 or any private year. So
And
prior
this
year.
is 2006 with Australia giving them the money.
Yeah. Well, this text is from 2008.
Okay.
And so it's unclear when Australia started giving money for climate change, but this text is from, I think, November 16th, 2008, which is just as the Clinton Foundation was putting its 990 in for 2007, and no 990 from 98 through 2007 shows any government grants. So how is Australia a government donor to the Clinton Climate Initiative? Then we get to the big dog, the Rockefeller Foundation. Now, the Rockefeller, as they say, the Rockefeller Foundation, Rockefellers know from carbon. I mean, that's how they made their money, is carbon.
Oil, right?
Right, energy. So they gave, in 2008, they gave $1.5 million to enable the poor to participate in global carbon markets. Now, let's think about that sentence. What does that mean? To enable the poor to participate in global carbon markets.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't, to me, that could mean anything. It doesn't sound very charitable.
No.
If you say, well, we have this Rimba Raya project that IRA needs, some feasibility studies and consultants, so we'll enable the poor of Indonesia to participate in the carbon markets and get the usual share that the poor get, which is buffer.
Nothing, right. But aren't poor people in Indonesia probably more interested in
food?
Yeah, food than orangutans? I mean, and having a house and stuff like that. I don't think they would care about carbon emissions or orangutans.
That's a big problem actually in Indonesia. One major problem in Indonesia and in poor places in the world is that it is a lot more straightforward, to burn trees down for cooking fires than it is to wait around 10, 20 years for the tree to be, trapping carbon, because you need to feed your mob of kids and extended family or whatever. So yeah, you're absolutely right that in the poorest parts of the poorest countries that have wood, natural wood, The stripping down these forests is a major league problem. It denudes the area of topsoil. It can change the drinking water. It can do all kinds of problems. But nonetheless, the Rockefeller Foundation, with all of it, now they, I would argue, could be forgiven a little bit because they're so big that actually 1.5 million or 1.8 million in 2008 and 1.7 in 2009 is chump change for them. Yeah. But for Barbara Streisand, not only did they give the 500,000, but they pledged another 500,000 for the following year. That's a major league error. Now here we have the Dutch postcode lottery. If we hit,
What's up with the lotteries, Charles?
they're in my mind, they're frauds.
You're saying any state lottery is a fraud?
No, not any, but these particular lotteries. So this is a great lady, Judy McLeod, in Canada, has written extensively. I put this article up here just because she's done so much work and there's so many links to the Dutch postcode lottery and its other lotteries. Basically, the lotteries themselves are run by a private for-profit entity. And what they're doing is they're saying, you'll have a chance to win these prizes, and there are lots of prizes that go out, but we collect more money from the tickets than we give out in prizes, and we keep the difference.
This is like Lotto, or you go to 7-Eleven and
Right.
buy a lottery ticket. So you're saying all lotteries like that, state lotteries, are frauds?
I'm not saying that, just what I'm saying to you is that there ought to be, I mean, it depends what your attitude towards gambling is, right? So I am of the view that this exercise of financing education and using lotteries, in theory, for charitable purposes, needs to be measured against a charity template. In other words, if this were a true charity, what percentage of the money collected would go to the charity? And you like to see that roughly 85% of the money that's collected in a given year goes to the charitable purpose. What you don't want to see is 50% of the money, gets scammed to the side by the promoter of the lottery, and only 50% gets given out to grants. Because oftentimes, when money goes to charity, I mean, the Dutch postcode lottery has been giving money to the Clinton Foundation, which I would argue is not a charity. How many other bad charities?
Well, so also Biljana told us that the Swedish postal lottery is doing that. And I certainly don't mean to derail, but I wanted to show you this company, Milestone Entertainment, which is basically doing nothing but servicing lotteries. What do you think about that?
I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
I just wanted to show you that very briefly because this was something that Quinn Michaels and I were discussing yesterday. So that's interesting to hear you say.
The reason I'd say it is, when people think about getting rich, the simplest way of getting wealthy is to live your life so that you spend less money than you earn. And that's the starting place. It's not to go down to, go to the store or get a six.
You got to have some way of getting money. I mean, if you earn zero, you could.
Well, but if you earn zero, you shouldn't be buying lottery tickets. So,
Right.
So what you see are people who are making, $40,000 a year, let's say, or $60,000 a year, rather than blowing whatever it is, $100 a year on lottery tickets under a theory that maybe you'll get $25 million. Get it into a discipline of saving $100 a year, or trying to get it up to $500 a year or $1,000 a year. And before long, once you get into that mentality, you will start having capital. But so the idea of encouraging the lottery approach to life, I don't see that as being all that responsible. And especially if lotteries are like concerts, they're like poorly run foundations.
You just don't know how many tickets are actually sold.
Exactly, and you could be,
You'd have to audit every 7-Eleven, every little magazine
Right.
stand. They're just selling those tickets.
Well, we don't know what they're doing. Is the problem. And so I think that in this day and age, I could understand the appeal of it 100 years ago, but in this day and age where we have the powerful technology tools that exist, I'm not sure that we want to go down a path of encouraging private companies to set up lotteries around the world, and then not examine how much the private companies are making off the deal. So these are some examples. Now, we're actually getting through this in record time, and which is good, because I thought it might be fun to play a little game here. And that is, if we hit that one, yeah.
I think we've got it here. Right?
Yeah. Now, these are these commitments to action, which need to be audited. So look at what they claim. From 2005 to 2016, members of the CGI community made more than 3,600 commitments, which have improved the lives of over 435 million people in more than 180 countries.
Whether they like it or not.
Yeah, I mean, that just seems a little bit grandiose to me. There are only 200 countries in the world, so they focused on 90% of the countries, and they got a good deal for 435 million people. Now, how did they do this through CGI, which didn't exist? How does an entity that doesn't legally exist
Well, it's just
do any of this?
hyperbolic nonsense, isn't it?
So we go down here a little bit, we'll have fun. We could do this, we could even have people who comment on this. We could search commitments to action under a keyword. And, well, you go ahead.
What do you want to search?
Fund. Let's see. Here we go. Let's see if we have anyone announcing a fund.
3D printing, freedom from human trafficking for girls. What the hell could that have to do with? Well, how does 3D printing?
I don't know, but there's got to be an announcement of them setting up a fund. But anyway, you'll see. Well, actually, if we do environmental fund, let's see if we get something.
I know somebody who told me he was a 3D printer salesman.
Yeah, they're two. Okay.
What's with all the 3D printing?
I thought aligning health strategies with community. All right, let's try investment fund. Take out environmental and just try investment fund. See if we get that. I know there was one. Yeah, what, that 3D printing.
That's persistent, isn't
Oh yeah,
it?
here we go. A new green economy. Investing in urban opportunities. The Urban Opportunity Retrofit Fund, a new social investment fund. I mean, how is that a charity?
Well, I mean, I don't even know what that means.
Right.
What is it that they're describing?
I don't know.
So that's it. It's just.
But so yeah, what they do is they describe. If we go back into the search, the other thing we could do is just for fun. We could do Siemens.
I thought you were going to say something else.
No, I would not spell that.
Bill Clinton's searching for that. He's like, who
Easy,
took that dress to the
easy.
dry cleaner?
Yeah, it's spelled S-I-E.
Sorry.
E-N-S. Yeah. All right, so when a corporation gives to a charity, it's got to establish that the charity exists. Now, we've told you that the Clinton Foundation Climate Initiative does not exist. Here is Siemens in various guises.
Siemens AG.
Yeah.
That's the main one, isn't it?
Yeah, $10 million commitment to contribute medical diagnostic. I mean, let's see if that's in relation to Clinton climate, because that's clean water.
You just click on it.
Yeah, read more, the bottom right, yeah. So they're giving away CT scanners, X-ray equipment
Good for hospitals.
to some place in China. But you can't just, either the Clinton Foundation is involved in this or it's not. I mean, holding a meeting in New York where you, Jason, brag about what you might do with some of your future money is not a charitable endeavor. And then spending $8 or $10 million on a party over the course of 3 or 4 days is certainly not charitable,
Even if you invite models?
especially if you invite models.
Oh, I thought they had it there.
Yeah.
Okay. So what
So-
else do we want to see here?
So anyway, this is a site where I would encourage members of the crowd to go into it in some depth and be your cynical selves and punch in things that you may know about and try to send us examples of Clinton Global Initiative, especially if they're environmental, charities or charitable commitments that sound fishy to you.
It's basically every single one listed there. They're going to get human trafficked girls to learn how to use 3D printers? Like, what was that?
I know.
You've been tortured and abused, and it's like, let me teach you how to use CAD software.
So then if we go back into the slide there.
I guess maybe it's a skill, or it's so weird.
here we have CNN documenting the Clinton speaking fees.
Oh, yes, right.
Right. And so one of the things that, if we just stay right here for a second, look at the Bill and Hillary paid speeches to Goldman Sachs between 2004 and 2007, okay? And then to UBS. I mean, these are a large number of payments, and so
Where do we see who it's from?
it says Bill and Hillary paid speeches to Goldman
Oh, yeah.
Sachs, to UBS.
And so UBS is or is not Union Bank of Switzerland?
We'll have to research that. It depends what time frame you're talking about. But what is something that you cannot do is set up a charity, right, and then say, I want to reward Bill and Hillary personally. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give them a speaking fee in recognition to the favor that Hillary did to me as Secretary of State, or Bill did to me with his network of international former leaders and current leaders that he knows around the world. Now I'm going to pay you off with these speeches.
But it's quite clear that they're doing that.
And this should be strictly forbidden.
Absolutely. And also something, maybe I'm crazy, but when I see such uniform numbers, it's like, wouldn't it, if you were really doing this, wouldn't it vary on the client and the city and the duration of the speech and the size of the audience and what you're talking about and to whom and your schedule? It's like, give me 125 grand.
Right, and again, when we think about, we put some of these figures up in the past, when we think about the top 10% of all American households has, on average, 2.1 people working in it, and they make around $280,000 or so. 250, 280, divide that by 2.1. You're talking about handing out in this $250,000 speech on June 6th to Bill Clinton, you were talking about giving him a payment that is greater than an average rich, top 10% of earners in America makes in a whole year.
Oh.
And there's no equity in that. I mean, there's no equity in that. And it's an obvious, it'd be one thing, you take that lovely mug, which has got Andrew McCabe on it, I guess.
No, actually, this one's the Hack to the Future mug.
Oh, the Hack to the Future mug, and I look at this for the first time and I say, Jason, I think a fair price, I'll give you $2,000 for that mug.
I'll take it.
Exactly.
I think it's about $17 on redbubble.com.
That's, I think, in essence, what's happening here. I mean,
Yeah.
there is a fair,
Oh, yeah.
there's a fair number, and I would bet the speech, in the case of, to pick on Hillary a bit, I bet you her speech is
To pick on her a bit. You just step outside the normal process.
Oh man.
But you were going to say, to pick on her a bit, the fee is...
It's outrageous.
It is.
It's an outrageous fee. And I think, again, I wouldn't have a problem with somebody in the for-profit world who's maybe can argue that they're going to get this kind of, and is not going to be involved in politics, not going to be involved.
Well, right. Like if you're Kanye West or something and you say, hey, if I give a speech at your place, X number of people are going to show up and you're going to make, he becomes a draw. Like, oh yeah, pay him 150 grand
Right.
to go to the club or whatever, and then we'll make 500.
Right. That's, as far as I'm concerned, that's okay. But if you're a dynastic political family and you go down this path, and what you're doing here is you're getting a war chest, and you're figuring out who are your friends and who
Right.
are your enemies, and you're putting people on notice that if you want to be on my good side, you get on this list here, and you get to listen to Bill crack jokes and Hillary torture chalkboards. So if we go back into the slides, we like to, I think, close. Actually, just if I go back here for a second, you can get away with all this if you refuse to disclose your conflicts of interest. You get away you get away with it for a while, but in a public charity or in a charity, eventually this all comes out, and that's where we are now. That all of this is going to. There are records everywhere. Bloomberg Philanthropy has excellent records. All of the Rockefeller Foundation, amazing records. These governments around the world, they have been sitting on the problem. They did not want to disclose the diabolical offenses that the Clinton Foundation has gotten themselves into. Now they're going to have to do it. In the UK especially, this idiot, the former mayor of London, Livingston, decent idea. You probably should have done it with a real charity and not with the Clinton Foundation. They're going to have to come forward. They have a secretariat of C40 in London. They have a big office complex, with records there. They're going to have to be forthcoming. They're going to have to cooperate. There are a lot of English charities that have been, either willingly or unwillingly snookered into this thing. The English government's been snookered into this thing, and there's a lot of egg on face, and we're not going to get through this by just saying, yeah, we're not going to talk about it. No, we're going to expose the full extent of this, and we're going to get these know-it-all people who are trying to impose globalism on us, sloppy, corrupt form of globalism. We're going to get them to show us what they're really up to, and then they can retreat from the stage, those that don't manage to actually really retreat into prison. And we can use the tools of technology to actually protect the environment. We could use best practices, maybe less involving the government and more involving individuals and companies, et cetera, to truly make the environment better. But let's not get involved anymore in this kind of messing about.
Right.
So if we go to the next slide, Donald Trump is going to infuriate the left, but if we hit this first link here, there are people talking about naming this portion of Jerusalem. Now, I've never been to Israel. I'm told it's actually a very interesting experience to go there, but they're talking about, perhaps in Jerusalem, which is of course an ancient city, saying that a portion of it will, where they're going to house all these embassies, including the American embassy, will be known in the vernacular as Trump Town.
Turning Jerusalem into Disney World.
So I don't know that.
But they should put a ride. You could have a train, and you could get on the Trump train and ride through Trump Town.
And Thomas Lifson is a great person who runs the American Thinker and is a great writer. And so it's an honor to put his work up here. So if we go to the back in there now, this Investment Watch blog, I see their work. It's very good, and I think it's not getting as much of a following as it deserves, in my opinion. But this plot to frame Trump, which I think began by March, April of 2016. I think the Clintons believed that Donald Trump would be the easiest candidate to beat. And I think we're going to, as we get into this, we're going to find out that they were delighted that Donald Trump seemed to be the person who would get the nomination.
Blowback effect.
And what's happening now is that Donald Trump, I think, he's taken a lot of body blows here, but he's still standing. And he's cleaning things up inside and outside the United States. I think there's a lot of evidence that we know Mr. Horowitz may or may not be looking at carefully.
There's Joe DeGenova.
Right, and he's absolutely right about that, by the way.
What was he?
He's saying that Comey's internal memos are basically a suicide note. He's committing suicide.
Wow.
And Joe DeGenova...
Legal suicide, he means.
I mean, he's incriminating himself. Joe DeGenova is a very honest, forthright, and extremely experienced lawyer who I'm in touch with him, and I have a high regard for him.
And Charles, it's interesting. We're seeing a lot of brazen plots to frame people. I feel a certain kinship with President Trump because some people are taking plays out of the same exact book as these guys, and I feel they are also signing their own legal suicide notes by just revealing everything that they're doing and blaming me for it.
Well, I'm sorry you're going through that, but you will persevere.
I think you're right. So
here is this article in the Federalist, which also is talking, the Zero Hedge has been talking about it, it's the next one, that apparently a group of people may have raised $50 million.
That's good money if you can get it.
That's a lot of money to hire Fusion GPS, and we're beginning to learn more about this. And it's one thing to be engaged in political activity, and people have views across the political spectrum, and I respect differing views. But it's another thing to raise money in a conspiracy to destroy somebody who runs, wins, and then is about to be seated as the President of the United States. And it's not okay, frankly. In the political land of rough and tumble, we've grown accustomed to the idea that anything politicians say is okay, and anything they do, any tactic is okay. Well, that's not true. You're not allowed to do what I think this group did to go after Donald Trump. And I think Americans need to understand what these people were doing. Why would they go to this extent? What did they seek to gain out of all this? I don't think it's just patriotism.
Right.
I think they thought that if they could get this job done, get Donald Trump displaced. They'd be very, very powerful, reasonably young. And
Who is this guy?
Former staffer of Dianne Feinstein. You know?
I don't like that guy.
I don't like him either. So then we have the spectacle that there was a gentleman, Admiral Jackson, who Barack Obama had complimented at job reviews twice. And this jerk from Montana started spreading rumors, unfounded allegations, no sourcing. And this culminated in Jackson saying, you know what, I'm not going to take this. I'm just not going to try to go through the confirmation process. And I think, you know, shame on you, Senator Tester. Your election's coming up in November of 2018. I think the people who watch this kind of behavior, who can vote in Montana, need to vote this guy out.
How come nobody's fat shaming him?
Well, we don't like to do that, but
Look at that comedian, what's her name, The Wolf.
right, I know.
John Tester. He's testing the boundaries of good taste.
Now this idea, this has been floated now of right as interest rates are rising now. When interest rates rise, generally speaking, the value of real estate goes down. Most real estate goes down. The notion that you would say, okay, interest rates are close to historic lows, mortgage rates are close to historic lows. Now what we're going to do is try to entice people to take a loan out. 97% the value of the property is your loan, 3% is your down payment. You know, that's a very risky thing
This
to
is
do.
the same thing that caused the mortgage crisis of 2008?
Right, and it destroys you to go through the process of, you know, doing this, defaulting on your process, on your mortgage. It's just, you don't want to entice particularly poor people into doing this. Yet, Freddie Mac is apparently, which is I think a government agency, is encouraging this type of behavior. I think shame on them.
Weren't they recently just too big to fail?
I guess.
Freddie Mac got bailed out somehow, didn't he?
I think they did, yeah. So in the week ahead, there's another, we've out of deference to George H.W. and the loss of Barbara, we've only been running articles once a week. But we've had a series baked in that is going to take many more days to get through it, looking at this Bush Clinton Katrina Foundation, and we're also hard at work looking at the Tsunami Foundation, at the Gulf Coast Recovery Foundation, at the Clinton Bush Haiti Fund. And sadly, these are examples where the former presidents, in this case H.W. and Bill, charitably, to be charitable now, nice, kind.
You being charitable, not them.
They didn't have their eye on the detail. They just, that's the kindest way of looking at it. The worst way is that what was going on after August of 2005? Did anybody close to Bill Clinton, who might live a separate life with him, based in Washington, D.C., have any need for money in 2006 to run for re-election in the U.S. Senate? Would yet another slush fund be a place where you could scam money to either pay off your supporters, pay consultants, pay for polls, pay for ads, pay for personal lifestyles? I mean, is this at all suspicious that you would have a very loosely controlled, you know, in theory, joint venture with HW where none of the numbers make any sense?
I mean, Charles, I think you could make a series out of this headline alone, and the next article could be "Meet two witnesses the FBI must grill in a real Iran-Contra probe," or a real 9/11 probe, or a real Enron probe, or a real mortgage crisis probe. Or, well, let's run through the list of stuff we could probe these two guys on.
That's right.
Despicable
You call it
characters.
meeting witnesses.
Right.
So if we go back to the slides.
We could just run through it.
Oh
this
yeah,
way.
do it that way. So I'm a big fan, as somebody who is not technologically sophisticated. I feel that it is incumbent upon people across the political spectrum to put pressure on Congress and on our president to consider what I would call Personal Identity and Metadata Protection Act, something like that. We don't yet understand in the general public how valuable our metadata actually is. That metadata being the data that is collected and massaged by the Facebooks, the Twitters, the Gmails, the Googles, et cetera. That data is intrinsically valuable.
Yeah.
And you know, I think too much business activity currently involves getting large crowds of people to give up incredibly valuable data to people who are not really telling you what they're going to use the data for, and then are harvesting that data. And that just isn't right.
I saw an amazing thing on this morning, Charles. It was saying that, I think it was talking about Cambridge Analytica's ability to, based on what you're liking on Facebook, like after 70 likes, within like 90% accuracy, they could determine your race, your sex, your sexual orientation. And once they got beyond a couple hundred likes, which, I mean, I've been on Facebook 8, 9, 10 years, I don't know. There's a lot of likes on there. They said that after a certain point, they know more about you than you do.
Really, yeah.
So that's like big data mining. That's a science for sure. There's a lot to that.
Yeah. Here's yet another bank saying that we're headed towards a debt crisis. I mean, that's pretty obvious. The amount of debt that we know about, there's the way to find that figure out in the United States is the Federal Reserve put something out called the Z1 statistics, and they have it's a very lengthy set of documents, goes back to 1945. It's done consistently. It shows you on all sorts of different ways the total debt inside the U.S. of different types of debt. There are other studies that look at global debt. No good study I've found thinks through what are the total amount of contingent liabilities that are on the planet Earth. The pension payments that are owed, the Social Security payments in this country, and their like. So the world is basically in an environment of irresponsibly low interest rates for too long now, since January 1st, 2009. Interest rates globally have been way too low, which has encouraged people to borrow way too much debt. And we've inflated this monumental bubble. And this never ends well.
This seems like a bit of an outlier on
it
this
does.
chart.
Yeah, which one is that? United
That's
States?
the United States, and
Right.
that's debt.
Right.
Cyprus is doing good.
Yeah, right.
Cyprus and Greece have very little debt, but I think they don't have much money.
They're small countries. Yeah.
Right.
So the U.S., the reason we've been able to get away with this is as you look at it, we're the least dirty shirt in the laundry. There are a lot of dirty shirts out there. There's too much wealth has been accumulated that needs a home. The people who have the wealth are not living off their incomes. They've got gigantic wealth. You got to put it somewhere. You're not going to put it in Russian bonds. You're not going to put it in Chinese bonds. You're not going to put it in Indian bonds. You will put it in American bonds and equities and other assets for now. But these type of crises, they hit hardest and they hit completely out of the blue. So if we go back to the slides, that may have been the last one. Yeah. The world really needs to confront this debt crisis, and I think we're seeing in the rise in the 10-year interest rate, the U.S. government 10-year interest rate is what I consider to be the benchmark.
I wanted to talk to you about this for a minute.
Sure.
Cheryl Atkinson, friend of the show, very respected journalist, she did an episode on her show, Full Measure, today about the Awan brothers scandal and cybersecurity and everything. And it was very interesting. It was I thought a good segment, and Cheryl does a great show. But she spoke to our favorite Diet Coke caddy, Mr. Chris Gowan. And it's always interesting to see people on video interviews, and it's also interesting to see people who refuse to appear on video, because there's so many things about how they act on camera that are very telling in terms of their demeanor.
That's him?
That's Gowan, yeah.
He's a scruffy.
I mean, he's looking around, he's umming and umming, touches his nose at some point during the interview. I do believe body language experts would tell you that touching the face is a sign of lying, which I do believe Chris Gowan is in the frequent practice of doing. That's my opinion based on observing him and listening to the things that he says. I was disappointed that I didn't get more of a chance to speak to Cheryl. I had a nice long conversation with her about Awan Brothers a couple months ago, and I really would have loved to know that she was speaking to Chris Gowan, because I would have brought to her attention the evidence that we discovered at 4809 Sprayer Street that showed there was a high-speed cable account there unbeknownst to the renter, and that Imran Awan came to the property every 2 or 3 days, and that there was a locked shed with some sort of air conditioning unit in it. Gowan just basically talks about how, in his words, fake news people have been putting out stories about the Awan brothers, but he doesn't want to talk about evidence. He just wants to hurl insults. And look at all the beautiful photography that I would presume was supplied by Gowan, Rhodes, Silva, and whoever else they have over there, because I haven't seen those photographs of Imran Awan around the internet. And it seems like Gowan is up to his usual practice of trying to put out smiling photographs of the handsome Imran Awan with his beautiful children, and talk about how racism and xenophobia and anti-Muslim sentiment have ruined this poor guy's life, who here is photographed right outside Gowan, Rhodes, Winnicek and Silva, whatever the hell the name of that fake law firm is. If we're fake news, he's a fake lawyer, because we're talking about real facts and evidence, and he's blowing a lot of smoke at Cheryl Atkinson. I would love to know what was going on in the shed at 4809 Sprayer. What happened, Chris Gowan? So Charles, is that all for this week?
It is indeed. 2 hours on the nose.
Very nice. But we did have this thing from the Seattle Times. Did we want to talk about that?
Yeah, that's, sorry, we jumped over that. Yep.
Well, because that was not opening in the other browser, so I have it over here. It's basically talking about one man's quest to cancel his $10.48 monthly donation to Hillary Clinton's nonprofit. We've actually heard from some other people about having oh, look what the ad blocker has tried to prevent us from seeing. The canceling of these ongoing perpetual payments to different DNC-related donation sites is a pretty persistent problem. Oh, that was Teresa Grafenstein, who is another person who played a role in this whole thing that I went and spoke to, that Dave Swigert is very anxious to miscategorize in a variety of ways. I bought a publicly available ticket to an event that was open to the public and asked her a question during the Q&A. She might not have liked the question, but it's certainly my right to ask it. I don't think I should be prevented from asking relevant questions to, oh wait, here's our buddy Gowan again.
But just back on the question of Hillary Clinton's charity, this is yet another charity, in quotes, charity. And I really am very much against the idea of encouraging people to make monthly gifts that are difficult to cancel. I think that is a bad practice. People will forget about them. And that is just not the right way to raise money, in my opinion. And I think that somebody connected to as many deplorably run charities as Hillary Clinton is connected to should have to, at least, at the very least, there should be something in the marketing materials that said, warning Bill Robinson, this person, has been involved with umpty-ump other charities whose reports are not filed properly, who have been bounced in certain states, who use illegal fundraisers, who raise money for causes they're not all. I mean, you should have to disclose all that, but no, not Hillary.
Well, not only that, the whole, give us your credit card and we'll just keep charging it until the sun burns out. That's like, remember back in the day they had it seems like every Sunday the newspaper would come or whatever, and it was that ad for the CD club or the record club where it was like a penny for a record. And you're like, I better get that. Yeah. But then they start sending you like $20 CDs every month and charging your credit, because they know you're going to forget about it. That in and of itself should be deemed a deceptive business practice and disallowed.
Right. And I'm not somebody who's keen on giving the government more powers to do more things, but the tools of deception have become ever more powerful. The propensity of some humans to deceive remains the same. And I don't think the government is doing enough to curb these deceptive practices. So I really hope, again, this could be an area where Republicans and Democrats and apolitical people could all agree, we're out of the deception business.
Yeah. And it's also, I think there's people who are honest and well-meaning, but maybe not that sophisticated or smart, and they deserve to be protected by people who are smarter and realize that there are predators out there trying to prey on them.
Right. So again, congratulations to the art department. I think we've kicked off our first It's Not Easy Being Green
Yeah.
show. There are many more green artists, scam artists that we could talk about, and we will be talking about them in some depth. People should take a hard look at their leisure at these slides, look at the C40 charity, try to find skeptics out there. You think I'm wrong? You show me one place where the Clinton Foundation has amended its important articles of incorporation to engage in fighting international climate change, and you further explain to me how flying around the world and going to conferences, why is that charity?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we could by
Well,
that
it's just
measure.
a disproportionate expenditure to the overall operating cost of the place.
Right, and it's just, I mean, you could care about something. That doesn't mean give you the right to just take a gigantic donation because I care about health, or I care about poverty,
Orangutans.
or I care about orangutans. You can care about a lot of things. Doesn't make it a charity.
Right. Well, Charles, that was another great episode. We've had a lot of really generous sponsors coming forward,
Good.
despite these malicious attacks that have attempted to suppress the information and slow the progress of Crowdsource the Truth. We continue to grow in a variety of ways, and the sponsorship is critical to that. Definitely want to thank, we've had now more than one person come forward with $100 per month sponsorships.
Good.
And again, I don't want anyone for which that would be a financial burden to do that. $1 a month helps quite a lot, because the goal again is to decentralize the sponsorship rather than having one gigantic company that owns it and pays for it and has corporate sponsors who can sway the news. By having hundreds present, hopefully eventually thousands of very small sponsors, everyone can be reassured that we're looking out for everybody's best interest and not being swayed one way or another. There's also been someone who's come forward with a $500 one-time sponsorship on paypal.me/crowdsourcethetruth. And I don't like to say the names of people who are becoming sponsors because a lot of people want to keep their privacy, but thank you very much to all the generous sponsors, and I hope that everyone will continue to do that. We really need that sponsorship now. We've got a lot of attacks coming. Dave Swigert is regularly saying he's going to take legal action and whatever, and the money is not going to be used for lawyers. That's what they keep persisting in wanting me to do, because they know that'll drain the money very quickly, but it does use up my time, and obviously money is needed to run the organization. We're going to be doing some traveling soon, some more investigations, so it's always great to have that sponsorship. And Charles, thank you for another amazing show. We'll be back with Charles Ortel closing in, but unless there's anything else you'd like to share, that's it for Sunday.
Thank you, Jason.
All right, and thanks everybody for watching. We will see you soon.